All right. Hello, my name is Bob Samuels. I'm a seasoned B2B marketer, alliance creator, and co-founder of Tech Connector. Tech Connector is a transparent marketplace of B2B lead generation solutions, composed of marketers, agencies, and advisors and solution providers. We created the ABM Leaders Group a couple of years ago as a community service, as a way for fellow marketers to give back and share best practices. The support and encouragement has proven invaluable, especially during the recent year of lockdown. I'll be introducing you to Rob Levitt of ITSMA, and we'll be joined by a terrific panel of ABM leaders. We'll be discussing and maybe challenging the findings and suggested ABM priorities for 2021 from the recent ITSMA ABMLA benchmark survey. Today's webinar is popular. We exceeded our attendance limit on Zoom. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to your participation. We will be having polling questions for each priority that we discuss, and we encourage you to send chats and ask questions. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Rob. Thank you.
Wow, Bob, thank you. And thanks everybody for joining. Really happy to be here and share some of the findings from our recent ABM benchmark study and have this fantastic panel of experts and practitioners comment from their experience and ideas about what's really important now for ABMers and ABM programs. What are the things that we should be prioritizing through the rest of this year? And as we look longer term, as we're moving to the next phase of our post-2021 disruption and craziness. So I'm going to start with a very brief overview of this benchmark study, and then we're going to get into some of the key recommendations and guidelines that we pulled out from the research with hundreds of ABM program leaders. So quick background on the study. We did a survey last fall of over 400 marketers at B2B firms. You can see some of the demographics here, as well as a series of deep dive interviews with ABM leaders and ABM program leaders. We did several types of analysis, both just in the aggregate, what are we seeing across ABM programs? And then we tried to pull out what are the most mature, experienced companies doing differently? And what are the high performers doing differently? And those are overlapping groups. Typically, high performance correlates with experience. ABM does take time to get really good at it, but a little bit of difference. I'm going to share some data and some highlights over the next few minutes, and then we're going to open it up to our panel. And I should say, the study is available to everybody. You can go to itsma.com or the ABM Leadership Alliance and download your copy of that study. So key findings, and just quick reminder, folks, if everybody can mute when you're not talking. All right. So first point is about spending. And what we see when we ask ABM program leaders is that companies that are doing ABM are really invested. And so on average, we see companies that are doing ABM spending more than a quarter of their entire marketing budget on it. There's wide variance, and it is skewed a little bit. Smaller companies tend to spend even more on ABM as a percentage of total marketing than larger companies. So you can see a little bit of the data on the left-hand side. Small companies close to a third, larger companies more like 20%. And there's a big range. I mean, there are companies that are spending almost all of their marketing on ABM. So companies that are doing it are all in. So that's point number one. Point number two, and one of the reasons for that investment is that companies continue to see higher return on marketing investment with their ABM spending than with pretty much all other types of marketing. So here's some specific data that shows 3/4 of companies see somewhat or significantly higher returns from their ABM programs than from other B2B marketing initiatives. So that's pretty dramatic. when we look at it. So more spending, high returns. Third point, nevertheless, the majority of ABM programs are still early in development. So the data here is organized by ITSMA's ABM Adoption Model. We talk about 4 stages of development for your ABM programs, just beginning to explore, experimenting, you're kind of running pilot projects and figuring it out. You've kind of figured it out, you're expanding now, you're deepening investment and broadening coverage. And then finally, ABM is embedded as a core part of your corporate strategy, not just marketing, but marketing, sales, and business strategy. And there are not a lot of companies that say they're at that level. You can see here a significant majority are still in the early phases. And that's because every year, more and more companies are getting started with ABM. We're going to actually do a quick poll of the audience here, and we'd love to know what stage you're in based on the 4-stage model. So Bob?
Yeah, we'll do that. And then also, if you can clarify, someone had a question, what do you define as ABM?
That is actually a fabulous question. So ITSMA has a definition, which is account-based marketing is treating accounts as markets. And it's a business strategy that creates client-based, insight-based programs for individual named accounts based on their issues and priorities. Fully integrated marketing and sales approach, highly customized and personalized approaches. A lot of people have different definitions of ABM. In fact, ITSMA coined the term account-based marketing back in 2003. So a lot of companies do use our definition, which is very much a individual account-based approach to creating customized campaigns for with sales and marketing in full partnership. So a lot of words there.
Some good words in there. So we've got about half the people have voted so far. I'll give it a little bit more time.
We'll see how close we get to the broader industry benchmark from this group on the line.
So are you able to see the numbers as it goes, or am I just in one?
No, I think you need to
I'll end it.
Close it out.
Okay, I'll give it a total of a minute, 10 more seconds.
Right.
So I have a question while we're waiting for that 10 seconds,
Sure.
Rob, because I have a lot of difference in size of companies that I've been doing ABM with. And so can you explain a little bit, how does the definition of ABM differ from partner marketing? Okay, full disclosure, I come from Intel is one of my biggies. And right now I'm in a teeny tiny small company where we're doing partner marketing. So what is the nuances between partner marketing and this ABM?
And when you say partner marketing, do you mean kind of alliance partners, business partners?
Actually, so right now it's a business partners, but even with, like, if you use Intel as an example, they're partners like Dell and HP and things like that. But in my current situation, my partners are my distributors and my managed service providers that are going to sell my product. And so, because we approach those on an individual basis by company. So is there a different nuanced definition between a partner program like that and the ABM definition as you defined it?
It's actually, I like the question, Tom. Partners, typically you're going to market with, as opposed to selling to, but that's also a gray area and nuanced. And we've run ABM programs kind of at partners when you're trying to really expand a relationship with a partner. You may run a marketing and sales program to strengthen that relationship and ultimately create more value. So in that sense, it can be similar. But ultimately, we always talk about account-based marketing as it literally starts with who are the accounts that you're focused on and what is it that you're trying to accomplish with them? What are their issues, and then how can you best serve them, and how can marketing and sales work together? So you can do account-based marketing toward your partners, you can also do it with your
With your
partners
partner.
towards
Gotcha.
end clients.
Gotcha.
Good question.
At my point, I'm doing both.
No, which is great, which is great. All right, so Bob, I'm loving the results here, and pretty similar, even a little bit skewed more towards early stage, but very close, very close. So I love, number one, seeing our study validated with another
Oh,
audience,
that's
right?
very close, isn't it? That's almost
That's
identical.
fabulous.
Wow.
Great. Cool.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's do a couple more highlights of the study before we get into more the prescriptive part. And this follows directly from this idea that a lot of companies and a lot of folks on the webcast today are early stage. Maturity matters. We see significant differences in the overall results and impact with ABM as you get more experience. It's a different way to go to market. It's a different way for marketing and sales to collaborate. It's a different way to do research on accounts. And so I guess not surprisingly, the most experienced programs drive significantly higher results. So you can see here around brand, around pipeline, around kind of relationships and engagement, around revenue, of course, big differences between the most experienced and other companies. Again, all of this data is available, so I don't want to stay too long on that. I want to shift to the next phase. But two more slides here, and this one is an interesting one because over the years, we've seen the development of multiple kinds of ABM. And from the very early days, 10, 15 years ago, when pioneers were developing account-based marketing, it was pretty much a one-to-one approach. Your most strategic, usually existing clients, how can we do much more with them? But over time, as companies wanted to scale coverage and cover more accounts, we've seen the development of one to few, where you're working with clusters of accounts, 5, 10, 20, 30 accounts, maybe in the same industry or same issues. And then one to many, where you're really much more tech-based and using data and tools to help personalize at large scale. So on the left-hand side, you can see that, it's roughly equivalent in who's doing what. But the more interesting point is that more companies are beginning to develop what we call a blended strategy, where you're implementing several or all three kinds of ABM. That's still early. 64% are just doing one type. But we see more than a third are now doing two or even all three types, which enables you to have breadth and depth. So you can look at the pyramid on the left and say, okay, for our most important accounts, we're going to go really deep. They drive a huge amount of revenue. It's where we innovate. They're our most important references. We really want to invest in them. But that's really expensive. So, let's take a second tier and maybe we'll cluster. We want to, we know that there are 25 top banks. We can't do all of them one-to-one. So let's do some sort of hyper-targeted, personalized within. And then broader, maybe financial services, insurance companies, or, to stick with that example. So this is a maturity issue. A lot of companies have started with one-to-one. A lot of companies have started with one-to-many. And from both directions, programs, as they develop and gain experience, begin to move up or down the pyramid for breadth and depth. All right, last quick point is about challenges. And perhaps not surprisingly, here's a question, just what are your top challenges? We ask people to pick up to 3. Measurement is top of the list. So even though we know that ABM drives really great results, it's still the top challenge. How do we track and measure results is number 1. Justifying program costs, proving ROI is number 3. So that whole area we want to get into in the discussion. Number 2, developing campaign assets that are mass customizable. You know, ABM's about customization and personalization, but if we're going to have any kind of scale, we can't literally be creating deep thought leadership content individually for 300 accounts. So how do we mass customize? So that's a huge one. Sales, educating sales, personalizing. So again, I'm not going to go through the list, but so with all of that, so big investments, companies are still early, beginning to see more blended strategies, still, you know, having a lot of issues and challenges around optimizing performance. Where do we go from here? So we're going to highlight for the next 45 minutes 5 priorities for 2021 based on our findings from the study. I'm going to share a data point, and then we're going to get discussion and commentary from our panel of experts. And we're also going to have a poll for each one of these. So you can see them. We'll go in order: accelerate agile, deepen account insight, strengthen sales collaboration, build a blended strategy, and invest in metrics. So those are the 5, and let's get started. So the first one is about agile. And my gosh, 2020, you know, if we didn't think we had to be agile before 2020, you know, we had no choice last year. But what we saw is when we looked at the most effective ABM programs, they were better. They were able to shift their ABM focus. What kind of ABM are we doing? What are we trying to accomplish with ABM? The strategic focus of the program faster. They moved more quickly to either add new accounts and clusters of accounts and actually back off of either certain industries or certain accounts, given changes in the market. And they were faster to look at new tactics. I mean, we all worked on new tactics, but the most effective programs were better and faster at that. So how do we accelerate agile with our ABM programs? I'm going to put a poll up and ask for discussion from our panelists. So here's the poll, and let me also, how agile is your program? Rate 1 to 5, where 1 is not at all agile, we are stuck, and 5 is extremely agile. So while you're rating yourself, let's get some discussion going. What do folks think on our panel?
Well, my perspective, Rob, is that the ability to be agile needs to thread through every participant, every stakeholder in an ABM program. So just marketing being able to be agile isn't good enough, right? You need to have sales able to be agile, agile in their ability to feed back to marketing so we can react, agile in their ability to react to what marketing is learning. And then all of the functions that support these teams, sales operations, sales enablement, need to be agile too. And this comes back to something you mentioned about scale, which is a really big challenge to achieve. You need to be able to build an engine that is designed to scale in order to be agile, in my opinion, unless you're a very, very small company.
Oh, that's great, Leslie. And Leslie, quick, just super quick, introduce yourself, and we'll ask everybody else just a quick one-liner about who you are when you
Sure.
speak.
Yeah, my pleasure. So I am Leslie Laura. I'm the Global Vice President of Growth Marketing for Avanti. We're an IT software company at about $1 billion in revenue, a little more now because we actually closed on an acquisition today, in fact. So big deal.
Nice. All right. Great. Other thoughts on accelerating agile?
Hi, Rob. I'm Jordan, Managing Director, founder of a demand generation agency based in London. First of all, Bob, thanks for putting this together. It's brilliant when you bring everybody together and I suppose organize this. So thank you. And Rob, for many, many years, you guys have been putting out some great content and great sort of tone and temperature in the room of the industry. So just to acknowledge that as well. I was just going to go back to one question that I think was coming across on the chat, which is what's definition of ABM? And I think you gave some really clear versions. I'm going to come from a slightly different view that I'm convinced I must put my hand up. I'm an ex-sales guy, or probably still in sales, so I come from a slightly different piece. But I'm pretty convinced ABM was created by marketers to solve one of the biggest challenges, which is how do we get on with sales? And I'm convinced ABM was really to remove the grey area and to align sales and marketing where there was no grey area and you had to work together. So I'm convinced it was a marketing tactic to win over their own business before it was to win other accounts. So that's my take on what I think ABM stands for. To pick up on what Leslie said and what came across in your poll results was content is predominantly a challenge when you're trying to grow at scale and you're trying to be agile and you're trying to personalize. And from a demand generation point of view, a lot of what we drive demand results for our clients for is leveraging on their content. And one of the things that we've seen work, which helps with agility, is if you try and create content for every persona or every function or everybody that's involved in that ABM chain, it's not only very costly, it's probably impractical. So we've seen some real scale and agility that came out of predominantly the COVID year, where content creation was actually designed to promote discussion internally by everybody they were trying to target. So rather than trying to create functional content or content that talked on a hyper-personalization stage, creating content that allowed discussion between departments around where they fit on a benchmark report or where they were in terms of their maturity or whatever that product that was trying to be promoted into them worked. We saw those businesses that created not one size fits all content, but one size that fits many content that ultimately promoted conversation were the ones that had agility at scale. So they could do it at scale, but they could do it with a personalized feel.
No,
So
that's great.
That's principally what I saw in terms of to the point that Leslie made and that came through in your poll piece.
Oh, excellent. Jordan, thank you. No, good comment. And I'm totally with you on the marketing to sales going all the way back. That's great. And so we can see our poll results here too. And a lot of, the majority is right in the middle, and it's a real bell curve, sort of perfect bell curve here. So I think, we're pretty good. We've got work to do. I'm going to respond to a chat question, and then we have one more comment here. There was a quick question on the study sample, mostly technology companies. The answer to that is yes. A lot of also technology services and other business services companies, a few manufacturing, all B2B companies for sure. Predominantly tech. I think the specific demographics are actually in the study if you want to look at. All right, let me call on Matt. We got time for one more comment before we get to the next topic. Matt, you wanted to weigh in on Agile?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I appreciate it. My name is Matt Levine. I'm the VP West Coast with Kingpin Communications. We're a global B2B digital marketing agency. And just to play off of Leslie and the sort of feedback loop, we sort of think about agility in two ways, and both sort of concurrent feedback loops in terms of how we look at both from a setup and an execution standpoint. And I think at the very top of being agile is the account selection and strategy. I think being able to, and whether that's a blended hybrid approach or however people look at going after an ABM process, it's about selecting the right accounts, and that starts with account selection. And so we think of that as account selection first and foremost. Then you get into the buyer's journey, then the content mapping, the tactics selection. We get into the scoring and analysis, and then really the last part is the journey optimization. And that journey optimization then feeds right back into that account selection. So then it becomes a really nice process where at any stage, as you kind of go through, you sort of are able to insert yourself and be agile to adjust as you go through. And then the second part is the execution. And that, again, is really a feedback loop of how do you target, how do you reach the right accounts, engage them. And we really think about that as the most critical thing, is engaging those buyers as we're talking to them. You qualify them, you close them, and then you grow those accounts. And then that again feeds right back into your targeting strategy. So that's kind of how we think about agility and being agile.
Good, good. And Matt, I absolutely love the focus on account selection. I mean, we always say you literally cannot put enough energy into that to get the right accounts. And a huge part of that is that marketing and sales alignment and doing it together. All right, let's go to our next topic. There's the poll. The next topic is about account insight, and everything ABM is or should be insight driven. What do we know about the accounts that we're prioritizing? What drives them? What are they investing in? What's their strategy to help us think about how can we best serve them? So one of the things we saw in our study is that the most effective programs invest more in data, insight, and analytics. You can see pretty significant, the asterisks in the middle here are all to show that these are statistically significant differences. So investing in insight, and we've got all kinds of hands raised. So let me call on some folks to comment on that. Greg, let me start with you. Who are you and how can we help?
Hi, I'm Greg Medaglia. I'm with B2Lead. I'm the CEO and founder of B2Lead. Our view of ABM comes from top of funnel lead generation that we do for our customers. So going back even a little bit to the agile discussion that we had previously, in the poll that you put out first was, how long have people been implementing ABM? And I think we've seen in our particular area is people are getting more and more, companies are getting more and more sophisticated in their ABM over the years. And the agile component of being able to adapt in the marketplace, but also being able to do it at scale leads into, I think, this deepened account insight. As marketers have gotten more and more sophisticated, they've looked to deepen the account insight through in a scalable way, intent, data, Sixth Sense, all these other account insight technologies that you can bring into the picture. That's great, but what we have found is people are getting more sophisticated at adapting these technologies in a scalable way, right? They started out maybe early last year in a way that was kind of handcrafted, and as we've gone on, we've seen more and more of these technologies integrated in to be in a scalable way to get what they're looking for, is this deeper penetration into the accounts.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Okay, so I neglected to say a minute ago, we've got a poll, like with all the topics. So as we're speaking, how effectively do you capture and use data and insight for ABM? Same 1 through 5 scale. So let's see how everybody is doing here. Let me turn next to Bill Doyle from SAP. Bill, what's your perspective on this? I know SAP does a huge amount of good work in this area.
Hey, thanks, Rob, very much. And Bill Doyle, I'm with SAP. I'm the global programs lead for our Crystal Ball initiative, which is essentially a digital account intelligence listening engine. And we bring in a whole bunch of first-party, third-party data and kind of new account insights. And we deliver that in the form of a portal, in the form of a mobile app to our sales teams, and also we have integrations into our existing MarTech stack. But the reason I kind of propose that up front is because our premise is really that with the move to COVID and the shift to work home, although we're seeing people return more to work, but it's inevitable that digital is the way to go. In talking to our publishers, they've said they had 5x traffic, last year during COVID. And, it's just the amount of digital and the amount of consumption internally by our sales teams around account insights, kind of hockey sticked as well through that time period. So, our perspectives aligned really well with ITSMAs from the standpoint you talk about what are the key elements of account insights, and it is around the data, it's around the insight, and it's around the analytics. And, you know, quickly, my perspective on data is that it's like the foundation. So you start with your data. Is it viable? Is it quality? You know, is your foundation built on sand, or is it built on cement or steel? But then you layer in the insights, because data in and of itself is only, and the insights provide the context. So when we deliver our digital account intelligence, whether it's to our sales teams or our marketing teams, it's contextual, it's role specific, and our ultimate objective is always to lead to a better customer experience. You know, the premise is we want our customers to be informed and not to be sold to. You know, so when we build this ABM, whether it's one-to-one, one-to-few, or one-to-many, that is one of our guiding principles. And, you know, part of the way I would wrap this is say, you have your data, you have your contextual insights. The final rung in that is really around what analytics are you bringing to the table. So at least at SAP, what we do is we bring in predictive capabilities to help to really do precision targeting in ABM. And again, that targeting is highly relevant based on the customer, what the customer is telling us their needs are. And what we've done in terms of predictive is we've looked at historical patterns of where our opportunities have been created, leads, and then revenue has been closed. And from an intent world, we've mapped intent patterns against the patterns where those opportunities close, which solution areas we have, so that when we're making recommendations to our marketing or sales teams around accounts, like the fit is that much closer. So we're looking at the near-term recency of intent, but we're also looking at the longer tail of the patterns of intent that ultimately led to a sales cycle, a successful sales cycle. And so I just wanted, I wanted to tie back the framework that you had to kind of how we think about some of the key elements in an account insight strategy.
No, that's Bill. Thank you. That's great. And I know some people are wondering, like, can I buy this crystal ball capability?
Maybe someday, not quite yet.
Exactly. All right. So we've got poll data, and I'm impressed. A lot of folks on the line are think they're doing pretty well here. So we've got a majority 4s and 5s. We may push some folks a little bit later on that, but let's get one more comment on this data insight and analytics, because Bill, I think you're absolutely right about we're now drowning in data. And so it's got to be good data, and it's got to be the right data, but that's just the foundation. How do we move to insight and action ultimately? Rohan, let me call on you. I'd love to get your thoughts on this.
Hi, thanks, Rob. All this is Rohan Salgarkar here. I'm one of the directors for this company, Avira Insight Technologies. We are basically a market intelligence and a sales consulting organization. From over the years, when we started, our role has evolved, looking at how the markets and the need of data has evolved. So it was very interesting to see Bill naming the initiative as Crystal Ball, because that's how insight has to be. It has to be the core. And interestingly, fun fact, the core of Earth is called as a crystal ball. So I think it was a very intelligent way of putting it across, that insight is all about getting to the core, which is relevant to us. And that's what we have seen has been shaped up or evolved during the different times where people have tried to win more customers. In pandemic, especially in this scenario where we see that there is data, there is intelligence, but what is more relevant to me? What intelligence is going to help my sales team? And that Jordan was one who pointed out the connection between the marketing and sales. And that's where we have found out our sweet spot, that the intelligence, the market intelligence, the account intelligence plays one of the biggest bridges to come in and bridge that gap between the sales and marketing. So what intelligence are we talking over here that Avira and its customers have been looking out? It is about the intelligence of what we are selling to whom we are selling, but most importantly, why will customers buy from us? So though you have intent, though you have the information of who's searching what, but do you have the intelligence that is this the right fit of a customer for me? And that's where we have been on the groundwork we have used machine learning ourselves. We have used intent data from different data sources, but we went a little old school starting last year, where we started collecting information through primary research. And it was an interesting insight for us that the level of intelligence now is not about whom should we target. The level of intelligence that now our customers asked us was, how do I win this customer? So from whom to target to win, I think that span was bridged by the year 2020 by kind of taking it off from our books. And that's where we see, this is going to just get evolved. So in the last conference, Avira was mostly not at the right spot. But when Robert shared this presentation, I think the deep account insights is where we find ourselves at the right spot over here. So yes, it's great to see account intelligence, data insights becoming significant here.
No, Rohan, thank you. And I really love that your note just now on primary research, because with all the digital data we can get and need to process and analyze, there's still so much qualitative insight, especially with our most important accounts, that we just can't get digitally. So that combination in that primary research, that's great. All right, let's go to our yep.
Rob, apologies to jump in. I just have one final point to make, if that's all right, because
yep.
I think when these types of reports come out annually, what you typically tend to see is the latest technology that shows more intelligence tends to suddenly feature as another data point that people want to access. And technology is taking us to a point where the pinpoint accuracy, I sometimes feel, is taking us so far away from the original question. So there's a couple of things that I think is probably for another day, which is, when is too much data too much? Because if you ask any marketeer what data points they want more and more. Of course they do, because the more they can get, the more they can drill. But at what point have we got too much? And often what I see is there is so many levels of data that are either legacy or built on. The pace in which we're getting more intelligent data coming into systems is 10x what it was probably 12 months.
No, Jordan, I'm totally with you on that. And that is a really good topic for another session, because we can go very, very deep. And in fact, I will say, we're throwing 5 major topics really quickly at everybody. So we're trying to get a little bit below the surface and then hopefully set up deeper conversations on all of these. All right, let's move to our next topic, which is around sales collaboration. So we've touched on this a lot. Once again, we know that this is a core principle of account-based marketing. I mean, we at ITSMA, we say, if you are not fully integrated with sales, it isn't account-based marketing, full stop. But that's something that takes constant work. It's not something that you set up and then you're good, right? So we see here with the data that the most effective ABM programs are more closely aligned and collaborate more closely with sales. These are statistically significant differences. Reading left to right very quickly, our ABM programs are more closely aligned with our sales coverage model, which is an interesting one. Since the pandemic, we're working even more closely. And then the key question at the end, we are completely satisfied with the degree of collaboration. So even the most effective companies are getting like a C+ on that. And I think they're being honest. There is a lot of work to do on this, and it's constant. It's constant. So we've got a polling question that we would love to open up to find out that last question, how satisfied are you with the degree of sales and marketing collaboration? And then let's get some more of our experts into the conversation here. Pat, let me start with you. Sales and marketing collaboration.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. So Pat Oldenburg, I'm the Vice President of Demand Marketing and Operations at ServiceMax. We're a leader in the field service management software space, and excited to be here. So as far as the sales and marketing collaboration, what we've found is that the collaboration is not just at the point of execution when you're talking about activities, but it's everything starting at the foundations in planning for the year, from the comp and the headcount requirement planning to the account selection and prioritization, a common set of expectations on the process that sales and marketing will both take with alerts and insights that we kind of just talked about on the data side, and then jointly agreed upon SLAs and responsibilities for the orchestrated efforts that we're continuously running. Because like you said, it's not just a marketing effort, or, you know, it's not lead gen anymore. It's really a joint effort. And then we found that when you align on your goals, the activities as you go are just more easily agreed upon. You don't have sales waiting for a lead flow when marketing's doing one-to-one account marketing or something like that. So yeah, that's what I wanted to contribute.
No, good, Pat. Thank you. No, appreciate that. Amy.
Hi, thanks, Rob. Hi, Amy Paul from Free Marketing. I'm a director here. This is probably one of my favorite topics, to be honest with you, because for anything to do with marketing within any campaign, that collaboration with sales be there. At the end of the day, there's targets on both of the marketing and the sales department's heads. And if they're not working in collaboration together, they're always going to be loggerheads or be failing. And what we do with our campaigns is to make sure, actually, we will always work backwards from a sales target, because inevitably, if that sales team is running with these leads, they're hitting the ground running, they're fully qualified, they're the accounts that they want to work with, then actually your marketing ROI has already answered itself. So they do a lot of the legwork for you, but you're listening to them. And, you know, the same way as the account bank marketing should be listening to the pain points of the customer, marketing should be listening to the pain points of the sales team. And theoretically, they're our ABM, to be honest with you. So I definitely think that everything works backward from this. And the ones who say that it's not a strong relationship, that they will be struggling, because we're the same now. Marketing and sales have targets on their head, and they should be really the same department, to be honest with you. We shouldn't be separate anymore.
Well, that's definitely a conversation, another conversation, Amy. I like that. So poll results, thank you, Amy. Poll results right in the middle here, another kind of bell curve that we see. And I'm curious, maybe in the chat, if those brave souls who gave themselves a 5, we would love to know who you are. Completely effective. Tom, quick comment before we go to the next one.
Well, I'm going to answer your question. I did put a 5 in there.
Ooh,
because so to give a little background, Tom Campbell, I am the head of marketing with Dropsuite, which is an email backup, Office 365 workspace backup company. But my breadth of ABM goes fully beyond that. I worked at Intel for quite a while, so large, Zendesk, Click, so a lot of different areas to go about. And the one thing I've learned through all of this, the folks that have done this right in my career and now are the ones that are actually, to Amy's point, almost sales driven. Like marketing should be the support for sales. When we do this. So I found this with Dropsuite, that is exactly what we do. And we find a lot more success in our ABM programs because we're leading with those sales folks. What are their needs? Because marketing talks at a lot of people, but sales needs to talk specifically to, you know, one account versus a separate account versus a separate account. They may have a different feature that is important to them in your product or what you're doing. So it really is that sales-led approach that comes to marketing. And I believe it affects everything we've seen so far in the study you've seen. For example, the last page where we're talking about the insights. I mean, marketing is not, I believe, marketing is not as strong as sales to grab those account insights and those prospect insights. And so you've got to work with those because they know the marketplace, they know the target marketplace. We know how to market to them. So I think it's critical that we have that 1-2 punch. And for us, it's led by sales.
Excellent. No, Tom, thank you. Good. Again, I love the reiterating the sales insight into the accounts. It's not just the kind of the digital data. Now, if our sales folks, this will be my plea, like put a little more of that insight in your heads into the system. But we want you to be mostly selling. So, all right, let's go. We've got to kind of pick up the pace here a little bit. We've got about 10 minutes left to do our last two topics. And we're getting some good commentary in the chat and some questions. We'll try to get to those as well. The fourth point is about building a blended strategy. I showed a little bit of that earlier. And what we see here is that the most effective programs are much more likely to use a blended strategy. It's still early. The majority of companies, even the most effective, are still doing one type. But again, it enables you to go deep with your most important accounts and still have breadth of coverage when you're looking at several types. But it raises a lot of organizational questions and complexity about how to manage that. So love to get any comments from our panel. And we're also going to put up a polling question here. Which types of ABM, so you can check more than one. We'll see if we get to much more than 100% with this. So Bob, if you can put the poll up, and then comments from our panel. Who's doing this, seeing this, wondering about this?
Hi, Rob. It's Meredith here from Corey, and I'm the Managing Director of Demand Strategy, and we are a demand marketing firm focused exclusively on B2B tech companies, and really enjoy being part of these panels. So one of the things that we're definitely seeing and encouraging clients to do is this blended approach. And actually, there are so many ways that these tiers really work well together. One of the common approaches that we see is using a one-to-many program to actually bubble up and nurture and warm accounts to a point where they're actually then dropped into a one-to-few program. So, you know, as they engage, as we continue to evaluate their intent, as we look at, you know, their fit scores and those sorts of things, if accounts that are originally one-to-many really start to show those propensities and those signals, then they actually drop into a one-to-few program that is, you know, like a continuation essentially of some of the messaging and some of the experiences that they would have had at that one-to-many stage, but it's a higher touch, starts to involve sales more actively, for example, may start to incorporate some of those offline experiences. So it does feel like there's a lot of elegance to, you know, having a golden thread go through those particular tiers of experiences. I think one-to-one really is a special breed of account that you're usually dropping into one-to-one. So maybe having, you know, one-to-few accounts bubble up, I guess I would say, to a one-to-one type of approach would be less common, but certainly between one-to-many to one-to-few, I think there's a lot of connection points that make a lot of sense if folks can look at that in a more holistic view.
Great. Oh, Meredith, thank you. No, really, really interesting. And so we've got poll results. Bob, thank you. And yeah, we see similar to our benchmark study in terms of, you know, 40 to 60% doing each type of ABM, which obviously means that a number of you are doing more than one. We're well over 100%. Greg, let me call on you. I know you're raising your hand here.
Thanks, Rob. I just have like a particular data point. We see quite a few, we work with many companies who are implementing ABM in many campaigns. So we get to see across the board of how different companies are implementing their ABM. And this is kind of one of the eternal questions in ABM, you know, is ABM, and do you do ABM and, you know, normal marketing, or do you do ABM instead of normal marketing, right? And there's always that tension. But one of the things I saw in a trend happen over 2020 was the more sophisticated use of intent data and other things that allowed for discovery. So we end up with customers who provide a ABM list. They want us to be targeting them. But then if we're applying some of the other technologies to that, there's this, and the intent companies are getting better at this, is finding and discovering companies that you missed in your targeting list, right? So and then folding those in. So when you have a blended strategy of your target companies that you're doing, you know, the one-to-one marketing to, and then you have some form of programmatic ABM that you're able to implement, from our perspective, what we've seen is companies then are able to fold in that discovery of new companies out there that they hadn't anticipated. Because there's always, to me, this tension is like, did we get, you know, we shot the spear at what we were trying to hit, but if we miss it, right, if we didn't target the right organizations, what's out there that I don't know about, right? So having that stratified, you know, one to few, one to many, and being able to take advantage of all the discovery tools that are now available, right, gives you some confidence that, you know, I have a program to capture that new things as it goes through. That kind of goes back to Agile, that goes back to more sophistication with ABM practitioners. You know, these are the kind of things that it's evolving to. That's one data point from my perspective.
Greg, thank you. No, some good points there. And I think in picking up on Meredith on some of what you said as well, one of the most challenging aspects, I think, of ABM, especially when you look to more of a blended strategy, is how much do you invest in different kinds of accounts, right? So, you know, to me, one-to-one, these are companies that you're in it for the long term. And so, Meredith, I like your comments about you can find companies through broader approaches that may bubble up. But you don't want to go the other way so quickly, right? I mean, if you're starting to put a lot of extra energy into a really high touch VIP kind of approach, you don't want to stop that, meaning you don't want to start it unless you're really confident that it's worth continuing for a long time. So how you balance that, if you've got, you know, X dollars and people time to work across a blended strategy, you know, how you could allocate those resources is a really interesting question. All right, last topic. And we leave, I don't know if this is the best for last or the hardest for last or the worst for last, but certainly the number one challenge that people identify is measurement and ROI and proving the value of your ABM initiative. There's a big difference between all of us on the panel saying, well, of course ABM is way more effective than everything else, and proving it to maybe more skeptical folks in the business. So here we absolutely see that the most effective programs are better at measuring and demonstrating ROI. ROI is hard. That's not a simple thing to measure. And not everybody even does measure. People use it loosely, but in a serious way, only I think we saw 60% at best of companies are really measuring the return on investment from ABM. Here on the left are some of the metrics that commonly companies are focusing on. And you can see, of course, a lot around pipeline revenue, but also engagement. Are we connecting with people? Are we building relationships? The one thing that I'm a little personally disappointed on is we always talk about the 3 R's: reputation, relationships, and revenue. And ABM is a fantastic way to build reputation with the accounts that matter most. So some companies really measure that. It doesn't quite make the top of the list in the aggregate. So something to think about. But let's open this up. We've got a poll. Bob, if you can do that. And then let's get some more commentary. Michael.
Hey, Rob, how you doing?
Good.
Yeah, I love this area of metrics. And what fascinates me is, you know, sometimes I see, you know, marketing will put out, here's our ABM metrics, and sales will put out, here's our ABS metrics, if they call it that. And invariably, there's a couple observations. One is there's way too many metrics. And two, there's no one key driving metrics, which I call kind of a linchpin metric. So it's the highest degree of connection and value between what marketing brings and what sales needs. And I always call that some form of interactivity. So you could call it a net new prospect meeting, you could call it a net new customer meeting, you could call it a digital chat, but it's a two-way interactive discussion between sales and the prospect. And so I think you can blow up all of these metrics and say, let's drive one. And if you drive one, then you create programs that are specifically designed to drive that metric. It's amazing how many marketing metrics don't have net new prospect meetings or customer meetings at all on them. So I think we need to simplify this and focus. And the focus, I think, is on the linchpin interactive engagement metrics. Those are the most value because that says the prospect's talking to you, learning from you, and you're learning from the prospect.
Oh, Michael, thank you. And I'm guessing that we could have some debates around that, but I love the idea of simplifying, focusing in on maybe not one, maybe a few. I mean, you reminded me though of, oh God, I can't remember the question, but the whole rise of Net Promoter Score over the last 15 years was like, what's the one metric that you can really build your business around? And so that idea is great. Here's some polling results. Bell curve a little bit skewed to the early, to the left of a bell curve here. But yeah, this is hard. Measurement is hard. Michael, as you point out, what to measure, how to measure it, how to get everybody aligned. And I'm complete, if marketing and sales are measuring different things, I mean, I would say that's not even ABM to begin with. That's just marketing and sales. So building agreement on the key metrics for ABM to me comes first. Other comments? We've got a couple more minutes. Anybody else ready to weigh in on this metrics issue?
I just wanted to jump in because on our metrics issue, the one question that I don't see in here is a matter of timing. Because I don't know if some of you have experienced this. I'm experiencing this a lot, is that we all know, first of all, there's really no sales cycles anymore for most of our products. It's when they're ready for it. So we're not like ready to, I remember Intel, when everyone would do fleet at the end of the year and buy their computers, none of that happens anymore. So you have your sales and marketing folks are working really hard at their ABM, but then you're seeing a senior level person saying, why didn't we get that many wins or leads this week? Right. It takes a year to nurture this person, 3 months to do that. So I'm interested on other people's thoughts as well in terms of timing expectations when it comes to your ABM programs.
No, it's a great question. We always talk about what are the interim measures to show progress, right? And somebody mentioned this before, like, is the sales team totally on board? And are they asking for more? It's like, that's actually an important indicator. Quick comments. We've got about 1 minute left before we wrap this.
Well, I would just jump in and add that from my perspective, this comes back to the whole beginning, which is ABM the right strategy for your business, right? Your business model and business metrics, not just sales as metrics, literally your business, your P&Ls. They've got to understand the difference between what they get out of an ABM style marketing and sales approach to a go-to-market versus what they're going to get out of a different approach. And so this decision cannot be made unilaterally by a commercial function independent of business leadership.
Leslie, that is such a great place to wrap. ABM is a corporate strategy, and it should support and drive your business objectives. Again, full stop. I am with you 100%. I think I see lots of heads nodding. So thank you guys. Fantastic. Here's the study. If you want to download it, again, itsma.com, all kinds of other research and events and et cetera, et cetera. My contact information if people have follow-up. But Bob, back to you, my friend.
Excellent. Rob, thank you very much. You're awesome. Thank you, panelists. It's been fun and educational as advertised. And we look forward to doing more of these. Each one of these, we bit off a lot. I mean, each one of these subtopics, each one of these priorities is really warrants its own discussion. And I look forward to having, separate discussions on each one of those. And panelists, happy to have you join in whichever ones please you the most. This has been awesome. Attendees, thank you very much. We'll get you a copy of the on-demand. We can get you a copy of Rob's presentation. Let us know. And thank you for joining us. It's been awesome. I love it. Have a nice day, and thanks again. Go off and do good things.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
Bob.
Thanks, Bob. Bye,
Bye-bye.
guys.
Thank you, guys. Pleasure. Bye.
Cheers.